One of my 20-year-old video editors, who are not professional editors by any stretch, they just called it BTS. So some YouTuber was probably looking around on YouTube for BTS. And if he had not, or she, I don't know who it was, had not put BTS in that title, there's no way any Korean would have found it. Right, so my class, every day it's a different subject, right? So we came in and I think I called it Korea cool or Asian cool or something. And I talked about the internet, technology, some of the chaebols, just the stuff that's happening in Korea and K-pop. And being an ethnomusicologist, listening also to music all over the world, I always followed K-pop. And but I didn't know the names of any groups. And there were a few that I paid attention to, but so I was kind of aware of watching. But
so you saw Korea sort of bubbling under the surface over here in various ways, looking at it first from sort of the unhappy political situation, and then gradually see all these cultural things come in, and then something says, hey, this is really a marvelous place.
Cool. Yeah. So we watched that. We watched that happen, and so I watched all that, and so now I'm then riding that wave of saying, whoa, what's going on in Korea? And then I started slowly turning my attention, but it wasn't until I did that one video on BTS where that's the one.
That's the one where you had two statistics on the screen. 25 million something and some other statistics.
It was with they broke the record for Taylor Swift. Of course, now Taylor Swift is breaking all records for
all over
everybody.
Again.
Nobody competes. But I went in and I said, hey, I woke up and I've been waiting for that K-pop band that was going to really break through globally, not just here, not be popular, Girls' Generation. There were a number that were really big, and there was an underground following, but this happened in the way that all of Korea happened. Suddenly BTS became BTS.
All over the place. It was on every show, every night show.
But before that happened, I go into my class and I say, this is it. This band's going to take over the world. And you're going to know about them, your parents, your grandparents, in a few years, you're all going to know who this band is. And people, 7 students, 7 hands went up.
That's a classic scene. That was a classic video.
And I could never, I think I could live it out 1,000 times. And it was just that moment in time when that happened. And you asked me, when we first started talking, did I anticipate it or expect it or plan it? No, not at all. It was just a spontaneous thing. I woke up in the morning when I heard that on the BBC, and I said, okay, I gotta bring this thing back. This is the band. This is the K-pop band I've been waiting for, right? And then, most predictions, we both know, most of the things we predict are wrong in the world of the Academy. But once in a while we get something right, and but that didn't go right away. It was one of my 20-year-old video editors, who are not professional editors by any stretch. They just happened to label that video.
Pull that one out.
They just called it BTS. So some YouTuber was probably looking around on YouTube for BTS, Korean YouTuber, and they found that. And if he had not, or she, I don't know who it was, had not put BTS in that title, there's no way any Korean would have found it, but they did. And so then the Korean, somebody found it and they put it up, and then it was probably took a while for it to go, and I had no idea, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know the Koreans would take it in their films.
Yeah, it was clear over here, and you're in Penn State.
At Penn State, but I start getting contacted by, newspapers or radio station or something. Hey, could you comment on Hallyu? And I'm thinking, why are you asking me on Hallyu? What is that? Because I talked about Hallyu in my class, right? So I thought, they must have watched some video or something. But then people would say, oh no, Koreans really pay attention to you. And I said, how could they pay attention to me?
Everybody here knows you.
They do.
When I talk to people, I say, Sam Richards, I'm going to go meet Sam Richards today. And that's nice. And if anybody says, who's that? I'll say, the guy at Penn State with the big auditorium.
Yeah.
Oh,
YouTube.
The YouTube guy.
Professor.
I know who that is.
yeah, it's an honor to be able to put ideas out into the world as a professor.
Well, and that's the one thing that we're both trying to do, is to change the world through better ideas, a little at a time. And I think we both are trying to do the same thing, which is why you agreed to come on my channel, and why I'm happy to have you here on this channel.
Well, it's an honor for me to be on the channel, because I watch your channel for information. You know, I watched a few videos historical that you've done with history, a couple where you've been here in Korea and walking around in places, and I think, man, like, there aren't many Americans who have the history that you have, and the vision that you have, and this ability to understand both Korea and the West, and in particular the United States. But there just are not many people who have that in the way that you do. And I've spent, you know, your formative years, 50 years for you, right?
58.
58 years.
58 years tomorrow.
Wow.
Actually, November 22nd I came.
Wait, 58 years when you first encountered
First came to Korea, yeah. Do you know what Korean age is? You know how Korean age is?
Yeah.
Here's what I say. My American age is 77. My Korean age should be 78, right? Yeah. My Korean age is 58.
Yeah.
I'm 58 years old in Korea time.
That's amazing. You have the mind of a 47-year-old. That curiosity of your grandkids.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do.
Well, it's a fun place to be. This place is so full of energy, you know, and it pulls you in. And if you're not careful, you're sucked into a vortex you can't get out of. Yeah. When I was a graduate student, one of my colleagues from Harvard came out here to work on his PhD, and he had never been to Korea before. He was a true novice. Most of us had been in the Peace Corps, or like I was a Mormon missionary or whatever, had been here before. But this fellow came out, he hadn't been here before. Would you teach English to our group? Would you help direct our play? You like plays, would you direct our play? He started doing all these things to get involved with Korea. He never got his dissertation done. He just got pulled into it.
Yeah, I knew some of those folks.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can, as a sociologist, I can go into a place and pretty quickly start putting things together, you know, understanding the nature of the culture, and having certainly been to other places that are kind of similar. Every country is very different, every people are very different, but you know, there's a way in which I can go into a place and have an insider's view more quickly than most people, probably.
I mentioned to you on the phone what I think is the analogy for this this game, the candy store.
Yeah, that's
because you are like a kid in the candy store discovering Korea. You know, this is really sweet. This is really tastes good. And as you look at the different things, and as you do your quiz parts in your lecture, you know, like which liquor is sold most? Hard liquor, whiskey, tequila, gin, vodka, or soju. I would have put soju on the bottom of that list. I would have never guessed it's the best-selling hard liquor in the world. But you're like a kid in the candy store with all these discoveries you make. And what am I? I think I'm the franchise owner of a candy store. And to see you come into my candy store and see this and that and the other is really cool. I'm really happy to sell you my candy.
And you know, after a while, you're you know, like sending someone in a restaurant, you get kind of, you know that certain dishes are good, but when you sit down to eat them, it's never like the first time, right? And so the candy, you've got, oh, this is my favorite here, but you know, after a while, it's not the same. Whereas that newcomer who comes in and says, whoa, this candy right here, this is amazing, and you say, like, yeah, it's really, really good.
Have some.
Really have some.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. And I think that, again, having been to so many different candy stores, I go in with kind of a vision already of what I'm looking for. And when maybe I taste something that feels kind of off, I know, hang on.
What's going on here?
Go a little deeper, because this might be me. Maybe I'm not really understanding what's happening. In Korea, as East Asia, I think I would say, but Korea, there's some things that are kind of odd. Quirky, that when you understand them as you do, you say, oh, well, yeah, it's quirky, but it makes sense. But it makes sense. Look at it from this other way. And I'm smart enough to know don't say it's quirky. Unless, and I bring you up in my mind a lot. I think like, okay, what would Mark say? And I use you, and I say, what would he say about it? And then I say, well, don't say anything till you understand it. Yes.
Okay. That's really precious. That's really a neat insight. Well, today's been a great day. I've admired your work for the last 3-4 years since I discovered you. And I just can't believe how well you can handle a large auditorium class.
Yeah.
That's the nightmare class for most professors.
You know, it is. And you know, there is a way in which what people don't see, and if you watch, I don't ever challenge misinformation. I don't correct students. Sometimes they say things that are just really wrong, and I have to very carefully come around and say, well, where did you hear that?
Yeah.
Like, because
which corner of the internet did you pick that up?
Where'd you go? Because, you know, that maybe, and sometimes they'll catch the hint, and they'll say, oh, well, okay. Well, maybe, you know, but I can't say, hey, that's wrong, you know. Now, sometimes I will. I'll just come right out and say, okay, hang on a second. What you said is absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
However, it's awesome that you said it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you got to that.
Yeah.
Because it's actually really interesting. And what you just said is what many, many people think. But, and then we'll go there. And then
but there's some problems with that. Let's look at the problems.
But I have to be so careful because, man, if I just put a student on the spot like that, I lose trust with everybody, including viewers.
Yeah.
And so I can't.
Nobody likes to see anybody sacrificed. Nobody likes to see sacrificial lambs.
And they're used to gotcha moments. So my class is about race and ethnicity and culture. So everyone's thinking, okay, we're going to look for the racist. And the students are afraid that they're going to say something that's racist. And I'm like, no, you won't. And even if you do trust me, I will take it and I will turn it in some way that it will be clear that you're not, and that we're fine.
It's just marvelous how you do that. Yeah. It's just really wonderful.
Well, yeah, I get it from my wife, by the way.
Is that right?
Her work is asking questions. She's this facilitator training. So it's all about asking great questions. She's taught me how to do it. You know, for a while, she sat in the back room for a couple semesters because we were working on a television show for the World Channel. First for PBS and then for the World Channel. And I had to get much better at what I was doing, so I wore an earpiece. And she was watching the class, and she had a microphone, and she was saying,
really?
Okay, hang on, don't, hang on, just take a pause. Here's the question you want to ask this person. And so there would be times when I would just be standing, looking at someone, or someone's talking, and she would say, okay, don't pay attention to what that student's saying, because it doesn't matter, because you're going to go in a very different direction. So hang on, so here's the question you're going to ask as soon as we're done, right? And this is what she learned, and she has her master's in social work. She has her PhD as well, but she had her master's in social work, and she got trained to be a counselor, a therapist in this way. And so I wore that piece, and man, I got really good at asking good questions.
So that's one of the secrets. The
secret is, you know, you marry somebody, or you partner up with someone who's smarter than you and more talented than you, and life will be much better.
Yeah, indeed. I feel the same way. Exactly. Well, it's really been a pleasure to meet with you, but for now, let's say goodbye to our friends, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.